Greetings, YouTube. I recently saw something. It might have been on white people Twitter, a Tumblr I look at quite frequently, and dealing with the fact that one of the issues that we don't talk about as a culture, actually any Western culture doesn't really talk about it, any of the developed nations, is the danger posed by one particular demographic. And you'll probably figure out which demographic I'm talking about because it's going to be in the title of this video. But that demographic is white men. White men are not well. Now, I don't think that there's anybody in the world that isn't more justified into having this conversation than me, because I am the whitest white person that ever walked out of White Town. The only way you're going to get any whiter is if you're an albino. And I was raised steeped deep in white privilege, deep in male privilege, deep in straight privilege and cis privilege. I was utterly ignorant of how the world works for far too fucking long because it didn't affect me. Because I could blithely walk through life with blinders on, completely unaware that women were terrified to be out in the street at night. Or I could walk out literally at midnight and take a stroll and prowl through the streets of my city or my forests, and I did this on a regular basis as a youth. Completely confident in the fact that I would come home safe. No worries, no concerns, not one. I never worried about that. I never worried about being beaten in the street because I was straight. Because in my head, well, yeah, I know gay people exist, but I'm just me, right? I didn't even know what cis or trans meant in my youth. And it wasn't until I had personal encounters on a first-hand named basis with someone I loved who found themselves dealing with the fact that their view of themselves and their body did not align. Then suddenly it mattered. And that's privilege. Until it affected me, it wasn't something I had to think about. And far too many men in America and in all the other developed nations are in the same spot. They see themselves as the default setting, and they can't understand why everyone doesn't understand that. Hell, they've been in charge for centuries, and the world is just fine if you're a white, straight, cis man. But you see, now at 56, I'm a student of history. I'm an intersectional feminist. I've come to understand what utter bullshit my worldview was for far too long. And I'm still working on it. It's taken me too long to get here, and I am sorry. I am sorry to all the women I gave shit to over the course of my life because I didn't understand the sexist, misogynistic worldview I had been raised with. I apologize to all the minority groups out, the brown people, the black people, the red people, the yellow people, that I was cruel to through microaggressions or just ignoring your problems because they weren't mine. And I apologize to the gay people and the trans people who I just ignored for years, decades of my life. Sure, there was they existed, but in this kind of theoretical academic sense. But they don't have theoretical academic lives. And it isn't theoretical and academic oppression that holds them down. It isn't theoretical and academic fists that beat them in the streets or drive them from their homes. One of the things conservatives tell you about is they're really concerned about missing children. And then they don't deal with the fact that hundreds of thousands of them are kids kicked out of their homes because they're gay or trans. Just driven into the streets. And then suddenly the family's like, Johnny's just gone. And they act like it's a big fucking mystery. It isn't. And the problem is social conservatism. And in the developed world, the champions of social conservatism are white men. White men are unhappy. They have incredibly high suicide rates. I know. I suffer anxiety, depression, and PTSD. I am well versed in what suicide is like when it lives inside your head every goddamn day. I get it. But you know what I'm doing? Research, therapy. I'm trying to become a better fellow citizen. I'm trying to be a solid ally. I know that I fall short of what all the people in the world that need my allyship require. But I'm not giving up, and I'm going to keep going. I vote for the most progressive candidates I can because I understand that their worldview is better than the worldview being endorsed by white men, particularly in America. White men overwhelmingly voted for a party of white nationalism and fascism in America. If white men voted, even like white women, the GOP would be done. Just done. But no, they keep supporting the party of white nationalism because that's the party supporting the worldview they desperately want to maintain. The worldview, the world narrative of white nationalism, of white supremacy. The institutionalized structures that put them at the top, and they are terrified of falling from that position. I may get to live to see America that isn't dominated by a white population above 50%. We are going to become a nation, a major minority nation. There will be no group that's over 50% in my lifetime, if I'm lucky. And those white men are terrified of what happens when they're no longer above that 50% mark, because they know how they've treated women and all the minority groups out there. And women are winning more and more seats of power, and minority groups are winning more and more seats of power. We have, 6 new Native American politicians elected to Congress, I think it was? The Squad just got reelected? Thank the gods. I want AOC as my president, not Joe Biden. I'll take Sanders, but in my book, he's just a placeholder until AOC can take over. But white men are not healthy in this country, and people aren't talking about it. Now, I'm going to get called an issue. I'll be called on white guilt in the comments below. I know I will. Those comments won't last long because I'll be banning those assholes because I don't need them in my life or on my channel, and I'm not going to let them use my channel as a platform for their particular toxic worldview. But I'm not guilty about being white. I accept the damage that people that look like me have done, that have beards like me have done. White men have ruined this goddamn planet. And I may even get some people down there telling me about, well, why don't you look at Africa? They're in horrible shape, because, not run by white people. Of course, our country is in shit shape, and it's run by white people at the moment. They'll ignore that part. They really will. But complaining that nations that have been dominated by colonialism aren't doing as well as they would have in a world where there had been no colonialism, a fictional world that doesn't exist, and we will never get an idea because colonialism has stamped down on that. So they may recover from it, but we'll never know what the world would look like without it. But complaining about a nation not doing well in 2020, having suffered under the boot of oppression and colonialism for centuries, is a bit like complaining that the goalie in a soccer net that you've broken their arms and legs isn't doing a really good job of stopping the ball. Well, why aren't they stopping the ball? they're in the goal. They're right there in the goal. They're in the net. Why aren't they stopping those balls? Well, maybe if you hadn't broken their arms and legs, they'd be doing a better job. But we're never going to know that because you've gone and done it already. Sure, they may recover, but they're never going to be the same. And all those goals that got made in the meantime are never going to be rescinded. White men are not healthy, and we have damaged this planet to a potentially unrecoverable degree. We may have pushed the ecology of this planet to the point where it will no longer support human life. And it's people that look like me that have done it. The capitalists at the top. And all the capitalists at the top, folks, look like me. And it's wrong. And we need to address the fact that white men, particularly in America, are not healthy. They're angry, they're armed, and they're dangerous. We're not talking about the patriarchy. We're not talking about toxic masculinity. We're not talking about the fact that men just don't seek the mental health help they need. They're unhealthy. They're mentally unhealthy. They're angry. And they're willing to lash out at the whole goddamn world on their way down. They're willing to destroy it all, burn it to the ground if it means that somebody else doesn't win. And we need to talk about this, and we aren't. So let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the patriarchy, toxic masculinity. Maybe we should keep a tally of how many people I have to block because of this video. That'll be entertaining. Because the white men, they don't want to talk about this. But I'm going to anyway. You know why? Because I may not be perfectly healthy, but I'm not a coward.